Part 1. The echo of flame. The parchment caught fire before it hit the ground. A candle tipped, just slightly, and within seconds, a tongue of flame licked the edge of the drawing. The room filled with smoke and burnt dreams. But Peter didn't flinch. 11 years old, barefoot in a stone-cold room in Siegen, he watched the curling edge of his sketch burn away like it had never existed. His mother burst in. "Peter?" But the boy only turned to her with wide eyes as if asking a question he couldn't voice. If the world can take everything, why give it anything beautiful? Peter Paul Rubens was born into exile, baptized under the shadow of scandal and danger. His father, Jan Rubens, had once been a celebrated jurist. But when he was discovered to be the lover of Anna of Saxony, wife of William the Silent, disgrace fell like a guillotine. Imprisonment. Public shame. And then, in the damp silence of a German cell, Peter's father died. The boy never really knew him. What he inherited wasn't a name or a fortune, but a wound, invisible and roaring. A craving for order, beauty and redemption. His mother, Maria Pipelinks, was a woman of fire wrapped in iron. She pulled her children from ruin, returning to Antwerp, now under Spanish Catholic rule, where she raised Peter with an education shaped by three forces: discipline, devotion, and desperation. At 12, Rubens could quote Seneca and Cicero. At 13 he painted his first portrait. By 15 he was apprenticed to Tobias Verheegt, a landscape painter of solid reputation but limited imagination. Peter wanted more. Part 2. Flanders in blood and brushstrokes. By the age of 20, Rubens was already whispering to saints in oil and pigment. He had shifted through masters like a hungry man devours bread, learning from Adam van Noort and Otto van Veen, absorbing not just skill but ambition. But still Antwerp felt too small. In 1600 he set out for Italy, the land of Titans. He stepped into Venice and saw Titian. Not the man but the power of him, alive in canvas and scarlet. The weight of flesh. The thunder of light. Then Rome, and Rubens fell into rapture. The Vatican frescoes of Raphael, the torment of Michelangelo's Last Judgment. It was as though the very walls breathed. He didn't merely study the ancients. He conversed with them. While working as court painter to Duke Vincenzo Gonzaga in Mantua, Rubens made a fateful journey, to Spain to copy works for the Duke, and to observe the Baroque awakening firsthand. He saw the Spanish court, decadent, brutal, glorious. He understood how power could seduce and sanctify itself. Everywhere he went, Rubens listened, not with ears but with eyes. Every fold of fabric, every curl of muscle, every tear in a martyr's eye. He returned to Italy with fever in his fingers. And then tragedy. In 1608 news arrived from Antwerp. His mother was dying. He raced home. He was too late. The anchor of his life, gone. Her death shattered him. But it also set him loose. He returned to Antwerp, a master now. And he painted not for mentors or dukes or kings. He painted because he had seen the abyss and knew how to illuminate it. The apostle of flesh. When Rubens returned to Antwerp in 1609, it was not the same boy who had fled 10 years earlier. He came back with the fire of Italy in his veins and the shadows of Rome behind his eyes. And Flanders, torn by war and religious fracture, was hungry for hope. He accepted a prestigious role, court painter to Archduke Albert and Archduchess Isabella, governors of the Spanish Netherlands. The appointment gave him immunity, honor, and, most importantly, freedom. Rubens set up a studio in Antwerp that would become legendary. Not merely a workshop, but a cathedral of ambition. Canvases taller than men hung from walls. Pigments from Venice, Rome, and Seville glimmered like blood and fire. And around him, a flock of young artists, Anthony van Dyck among them, studied at the feet of a man who painted as if God had whispered secrets into his ear. But Rubens was no ivory tower recluse. He was statesman, scholar, diplomat. Fluent in 6 languages. He walked the courts of Europe with the same grace he moved his brush. Princes and popes wrote him letters not as a servant, but as a peer. His art was more than art. It was rhetoric in oil. An act of persuasion. A sermon of flesh. In his altarpieces, saints ascended with volcanic ecstasy. Martyrs didn't die, they exploded into grace. His raising of the cross in the Cathedral of Antwerp, painted between 1610 to 11, was not a scene of pain but of divine violence. Sinew, sky, and wood all groaned in a single upward motion. Christ was not passive. He resisted gravity. Like Rubens himself. But even amidst glory, Rubens longed for something more fragile: intimacy. Part 3. The Bride of the Master. Her name was Isabella Brandt, daughter of a humanist scholar. Bright eyes, a sharp mind, a soul of quiet elegance. Rubens fell, deeply, completely. Their marriage was a painting in motion. He sketched her constantly in margins and masterpieces alike. His portraits of her were not formalities, they were love songs. They had 3 children. And for a time the great Rubens, titan of brush and mind, was simply a man in love. He painted myth as metaphor for devotion, Venus and Adonis, Perseus and Andromeda, the garden of love. Bodies draped in silk, kissed by sun and scent. It was sensuality without vulgarity, beauty with gravity. Yet even as his fame grew, commissions from across Europe, diplomatic missions to England and Spain, Rubens remained grounded in personal grief. Because fate, ever cruel, returned for him. In 1626, Isabella fell ill. And this time, not even his prayers could reshape the world. She died in winter. Rubens was 50. And for months he didn't paint. The world lost color. Part 4. The diplomat with a dagger in his brush. But Rubens was not just an artist. He was a bridge between nations, between empires at war. From 1627 to 1630, he was sent on secret diplomatic missions, first to Madrid, then to London, to broker peace between Spain and England. He moved through thrones and intrigues with the poise of a scholar and the instincts of a survivor. In Spain he met Velázquez. In England he charmed King Charles I, who knighted him. Rubens, the Flemish painter, became Sir Peter Paul Rubens. While others wielded swords, he wielded images, allegories of peace, paintings that softened kings and ignited treaties. But even amid politics, Rubens painted. His allegory of peace and war hung in Whitehall Palace like a silent ambassador. Rubens believed beauty could broker truth. And yet, all the while, a quiet hunger stirred in him again, not for power but for warmth. Part 5. The Girl in the Garden. In 1630, at age 53, Rubens shocked the court. He married Helene Formant, a 16-year-old girl of porcelain skin and golden hair. To many it was scandal. To Rubens it was resurrection. Helene was not a symbol. She was sensation. Youth, innocence and fire. She became his final muse, not idealized but real. Plump, soft, breathing. In the Garden of Love, Rubens painted her not as Venus, but above Venus. She bore him 5 children. Their home in Elowicht, a country estate of sun and ivy, was where Rubens turned from saints and kings to joy. He painted rural life, laughter, animals, skin in motion. Not as spectacle but as truth. His final works were mythic in size and ambition. The Medici cycle for the Luxembourg Palace in Paris, 24 grand canvases, a cinematic tribute to Marie de Medici. A whirlwind of history, allegory and Rubens' signature style. Bodies not frozen in time, but caught in ecstatic breath. The Court and the Crucible. Madrid. 1603. The Spanish court smelled of incense and cold marble. Rubens arrived with gifts not only from the Gonzagas but from the power behind them, the Catholic world, bruised and bleeding from war. His mission was to charm, observe and report. He did it all while studying Titian's works in the royal collection, memorizing each brushstroke like a secret spell. But something else stirred in him here. In the Spanish palaces, he saw power stripped bare, bloated kings, hollow-eyed courtiers, and eyes watching from behind every tapestry. Art was currency. And Rubens, fluent in Latin, Italian, French and now politics, was rich in it. He returned to Italy briefly, to Florence, Genoa, Venice, absorbing architecture and painting like a glutton at a feast. But by 1608 his letters grew darker. His mother was dying. He rushed home. Too late. She had passed before he arrived. Antwerp, once the cradle of his youth, now felt colder, more fragile. The city had changed and so had he. The Reformation's fractures had scarred it. The streets bore the weight of war. But he would not mourn for long. He could not afford to. Within a year, Rubens was appointed court painter to the Archduke Albert and the Infanta Isabella, rulers of the Spanish Netherlands. It was not just a title. It was a throne of brushes and gold leaf. From this seat, he would forge an empire of oil and canvas. He opened a massive studio in Antwerp, a machine of creativity. Dozens of assistants worked under him. Apprentices, engravers, even diplomats. His designs flooded Europe, from tapestries in Paris to altarpieces in Prague. But no hand painted the faces but his own. His portraits? They weren't likenesses. They were psychological traps. Rubens could peer into a man's ambition, into a woman's sorrow, and render it in flesh. His colors pulsed. His brush moved like it bled. He painted The Raising of the Cross, a symphony of agony, muscles straining, Christ lifted like a banner of war. In The Descent from the Cross, grief dripped like wax. These were not images, they were screams. And yet the court wanted more. More allegories. More Madonnas. More gods and beasts and battles. He delivered them faster than any man should. His hand never rested. But what no one saw was the toll. He began to speak less at gatherings. His eyes darted toward shadows. He woke at night, whispering lines of Virgil to calm his heart. There were whispers that Rubens had made a pact with ambition itself. He was still a diplomat, still a painter, still a scholar. But above all, Rubens had become something more dangerous. A man whose soul was consumed by creation. And the fire had only begun to rise. Part 6, Final Days of Fire, Legacy, Death and the Immortal Touch. As Rubens's hands weakened with age, his mind remained a tempest. The fire of creativity burned fiercely, unyielding to the frailty of the body. His studio, once a roaring hive of assistants and apprentices, gradually quieted, yet his vision remained colossal, a man wrestling with time itself. In his final years, Rubens took on commissions that transcended mere art. They were declarations of faith, power, and the human condition. The altarpieces and grandiose scenes shimmered with an almost prophetic intensity. He painted with the knowledge that his time was short but refused to relinquish the brush. One of his last masterpieces, The Triumph of the Eucharist, stands as a testament to his unwavering belief in art as a divine conduit, a bridge between mortal suffering and celestial grace. In this painting, angels cascade amid clouds, while mortals gaze upward with a mixture of awe and despair. The tension between salvation and doom was palpable, echoing Rubens's own turbulent life. Beyond the canvas, his diplomatic mission slowed, but the letters he penned remained sharp, filled with wisdom, passion, and a yearning for peace in a war-ravaged Europe. Paul Rubens died on May 30, 1640, leaving behind a world forever altered by his brush. His funeral was a spectacle of grandeur, befitting a man who had painted emperors and popes, who had wielded both paint and power. But the true immortality of Rubens lies not in monuments or titles. It is embedded in every stroke of flesh and light, every swirl of color and shadow he left behind. His paintings are more than images, they are echoes of a soul that danced on the knife's edge of creation and destruction. His legacy endures in the halls of museums and the whispers of art lovers, a reminder that genius often walks hand in hand with torment, and that from the deepest darkness can emerge the most radiant light.